Download the app from the App and Play Store.
My name is Shabnam Sahi. Welcome to Sunrise Radio. And my guest today is Kalpana Fitzpatrick. Kalpana, you're an award-winning financial journalist. You're an author. You have a book out titled Invest Now, The Simple Guide to Boosting Your Finances. It's fabulous to have you with us on Sunrise today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I've been looking through, I've read your book, of course. I've been looking through the articles that you've written, and very impressive. So let's just start with your introduction to financial journalism. You say how you chanced upon it. You really started that by accident. And it was while writing a piece on, was it pensions, that you really got into it and you realized how much there is to still discover, how people have, they don't really know much about investing, finances, being smart with their money, etc., etc. So talk us through the initial phase of your journey of becoming a financial correspondent journalist.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I always wanted to be a journalist when I was young. I also wanted to be a police officer. So it was a bit of a toss between the two. Like most financial journalists, probably, I didn't say to myself, I want to be a financial journalist. But it was quite a competitive area to get into. So I fell into financial journalism. And my first kind of job was in writing about pensions. So it was quite deep and but interesting, and I quite enjoyed it. But then as I got into it, I realized actually, this is really interesting, and I was amazed at how much passion I could put into writing about pensions and just finance generally. And since then, obviously, I've been doing all sorts of things when it comes to finance, like investing and personal finance. And yeah, so I think generally, and actually this is really apparent now with the cost of living crisis that we're all going through, is money has always been a closed subject.
Yeah.
I was actually quite lucky. My parents spoke about money quite openly, often to tell me off or whatever it was. But I just felt like there's a lot of negativity around money. It's such a taboo subject, so no one really talks about it. But I feel like we all should talk about it so that we could all be a bit more active in what we're doing when it comes to saving and doing more with our money, and not just always spending. And actually at the moment with the cost of living crisis, I feel like, we should all talk about money and not feel shamed about any issues or problems that we have. And that's actually quite a big thing as well. People feel ashamed if they're struggling or they're not quite sure what to do. So it's better to just stay quiet, which I don't think you should. We should all talk about it.
And I'm so pleased that, you decided to talk about it and write about it and to enlighten the rest of us. There's a bit I read in the introduction in your book which really resonated with me. I don't know whether it's something only Asian parents do, but you say that, whilst, your parents would have conversations about money, but it is that typical thing that, work hard, save harder. No one really talks about investment. And, there's a bit you say that, I had known in my 20s what I know now. So before we ask you to share some money saving tips or ideas with our listeners and our viewers about, how they can be smart with their money, tell me that. I mean, why do you say that I wish I had known then? What do you think the benefit of experience has given you in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you rightly say, my parents were great. They were always pushing me to save, so which I did really well. And at the time they were doing it, interest rates were really good, but they didn't talk to me about investing. I think and actually it's not just a cultural thing. I think this is very much the view by people that don't know how investing works. The view is that it's gambling, it's too risky, it's isn't something that you should do. It's safer to put your money in just a normal cash savings account. But also there's a lot of jargon around it, so it puts people off. And I think because of that, like I was always told, yeah, you don't want to invest. It's complicated. It's a bit like gambling. And actually it's far from that. It's not gambling. You're not making a bet against anything. And, you're not really going to lose your money in that same sort of, in that kind of way. So I mean, obviously with investing, you're subject to the stock market ups and downs, and that's important to note, but it's not gambling, you're putting money into companies. And if I'd known it when I was younger, and actually the thing about investing, the sooner you start, the more time money has time to grow. And that's the key important thing. The sooner you start, the better. I think people often say the best time was yesterday. But, so in other words, start now. And it just gives your money time to grow.
Mm.
And I think that's the key thing about investing. It isn't a get rich quick scheme.
Mm.
It's you put your money away, and you should be looking to lock it away for 5 to 10 years for it to actually really start showing growth. And so it is being patient with it as well.
What would you say specifically to someone listening to our conversation right now who's been toying with the idea? And exactly as you're saying, maybe they felt daunted, maybe they didn't understand the jargon, maybe something put them off and they felt that it was only for the experts. What would you say to them? How would you encourage them to have their money work harder for them?
Of course, first read the book. I mean, I
Yes.
definitely, bust all the myths in there and really break it down because, yeah, I'm so glad to see that. And it's really, it is a jargon-filled industry and it's so off-putting. And I think
Mm.
the lack of conversation around it doesn't help. I think the main thing is read the book, do your research, start small.
Mm.
So don't start, thinking, oh, it's going to put loads of money into it because that's not the way to start. Just start with a small amount, get comfortable
Mm.
slowly, and see how it all works, etc. But a really important message is before you start, appreciate there is a cost of living crisis. So work out what's an affordable amount for you
Yeah.
to lock away for the next 5, 10 years, money that you're not going to need. So
Mm.
the really important messages here. First, if you've got debts, start thinking about paying those off first.
Mm.
And make sure you've also got what I call emergency savings,
Mm.
emergency cash savings, and not your credit card.
Mm.
And that's to pay for life's emergencies. Something always happens. The car breaks down,
Yeah.
the boiler breaks down, the ceiling in the kitchen collapses, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
You don't want to put that money onto a credit card and then accumulate debt. That's what your
Mm.
emergency money is for.
Mm.
It could be, you want to switch jobs, you want to take a time out. It could be even that too. So make sure you've got your like cushion fund there sitting there to
Mm.
give you a bit of comfort zone. So your investment money has to really be money that you're not looking to spend in the next, foreseeable future for the 10 years time
Mm.
sort of thing.
Mm. Now, Kalpana, I love the fact that you actually contribute to magazines like Cosmo and Red and Good Housekeeping. And you say that, you want women to be interested in their financial lives as well. There is a gender thing. We often feel that it is something for the husbands or the dads or the brothers to do, right? Because you want us to take charge. We're now, I can't talk about pay parity now, but women are just as ambitious. They're reaching for the stars and really getting there and earning as much as their male counterparts. So I think investing, and as you're saying, being clever with your money, being wise about where and how you invest your money is not just for men, but for women as well. And, I've seen some of the articles that you've done for these magazines, for instance, how to gift your children money, how to save money over Christmas. That was another thing you did. Then you talk about things like, how to get the pay rise that you deserve, how to have that conversation with your boss, or indeed how to get a refund on almost anything. Now, I know we could sit here and talk for hours, but give us a little sense of where this starts. What would you say is the, most important thing for people to remember about their money?
I think the first thing is, and especially for women, I mean, I do loads of columns for like Ideal Home and Woman Magazine. And one of the things I'm always pushing for is financial independence.
Mm.
Doesn't matter about your gender.
Mm.
It's really important that, you are in control of your own money. No one else is
Yeah.
taking care of it for you.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing. I think that is the key message here.
Mm.
And also, when it comes to part of taking that control is building the confidence around finances. I think sometimes it goes back to what we were saying earlier, like we
Mm.
just don't talk about it. So going into your boss and asking for that pay rise
Mm.
is a confidence thing. Sometimes we're like, well, I shouldn't really talk about that, we shouldn't talk
Mm.
about pay. But by the way, if anyone is thinking of doing that, there's a cost of living crisis. People are looking at pay more than ever before. Do your research, think about what other companies in the same sector, similar jobs to you are being paid.
Mm.
Obviously, don't just go in and demand pay
Yeah.
rise. So it's just building that confidence and also just generally knowing how money works. People often, one thing I always get told is like, oh, I don't get a credit card, I know they're bad for you.
Mm.
I have the opposite view. Used correctly, you can use a credit card to your advantage, and actually it's a great way to boost your credit rating. So
Yes.
really understanding the basics of money as well is just so important, because you can only truly be financially independent if you actually know how money works. And we already know in the UK that financial literacy is such a big thing. It's like, we don't learn it at school. So we rely on learning it either for ourselves, or sometimes we learn things from social media, but we don't always learn it the right thing to
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
or with friends and family. So we're so reliant on other sources. So and educate yourself. I think that's just really important. I think self-education is, I've read it before, like I read a quote somewhere, self-education is the best education, and I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because each one of us has to assess our own financial circumstances and see what we can and can't afford, what works for us, what doesn't work for us. You're absolutely right there. Kalpana, what do you think is the most common financial quandary or dilemma that you've seen people face, even those who are already investing and are being smart about their money? Are there people who come up to you with specific questions, or, typical questions that you get asked from people who are investing but perhaps a little lost?
I think when it comes to people who are already investing,
Mm,
usually the people that come and ask me questions are people maybe just starting out or something.
mm, mm,
Is at the moment, we're in a recession, cost of living crisis, and things aren't looking that great for the economy at the moment. Which
mm,
obviously means if you're investing, you might see ups and downs in your investments, and
mm.
that is actually perfectly normal. And that's why I go back to that message about it. It's something that you need to let your money just sit there. Over time it will grow. Um, but people just like, oh, I'm really nervous. Should I take my money out? And I think that's a question that I get asked a lot.
Mm,
And I would always say, no, let it sit there, because you've got to give it time to ride the ups and
mm,
downs. That's how investing works. So I
mm.
think overcoming the nervousness around it, generally about money, people always say to me, I'm absolutely rubbish with money. And I think that's a real psychological thing as well. People need to just get out of that mindset, stop telling themselves that they're bad with money, because actually, like what I was just saying a little while ago,
Mm.
self-education, learn about it. It's your responsibility. Don't overly rely on everyone else to fix things for you. We didn't learn it at school, so it's on us to learn it for ourselves. I think that's really important message as well. So, read books, see what the media are saying. And I say this in my book, actually, financial journalists are some of the best educators out there at the moment when it comes
Mm,
to financial literacy. They are doing an amazing job,
mm.
not just telling you what's happening, but also just explaining things, and follow them, read, what they're saying. It's
Yeah.
really excellent stuff.
Mm. Now, Kalpana, my last question to you, in the light of the cost of living crisis, what would you share with our listeners, with our viewers on the YouTube channel about some money saving tips? Maybe what would be your top tips about on the cost of living crisis, allowing people to be a little more, smart, a little more sensible with where they're putting their money and how they are spending it. And, because everybody's struggling now, everybody's looking at their finances and
Yeah.
kind of, everyone could benefit from these tips, I'm
Yeah.
sure, no matter how comfortable you are financially.
Yeah, and on that, I would just like to say, I think everyone that I speak to nowadays is being sensible. They've been really
Yeah.
sensible, and they are doing everything that they can to cut costs. It is an expensive time. The thing I would say is, there's actually a few things I was going to say. First, review your finances. Make sure you
Mm,
haven't got any money leaks, and so make sure you're not. If your broadband deal is cheaper somewhere else and your end of
yeah.
contract, switch it over. Make
Mm,
sure you're looking at your expensive debts and paying those off as much as you can. But also, one really important thing is, don't ignore any problems that you think you're facing if you can't pay your mortgage or credit
mm,
card bills, or
mm.
even your council tax. Ring your creditors up and say, I am struggling, what help can you give me? I think
Yeah.
that phone call is
Yeah.
so important, rather than just burying your head in the sand, because actually, if you phone them up, they might be able to come up with some sort of repayment plan. There's social tariffs that you might be entitled to go on to, depending on your circumstances. I think the main thing is, talk to someone. Do not just bury your head in the sand. And if you are really struggling with debt, there's a great charity called Step Change,
Mm,
who's, get in touch, and they can give you all sorts of advice and tips, and even speak to creditors for you if it's really serious. But I would just like the message to be really mainly is,
mm.
if if you really can't pay a bill, whatever bill it is, do not ignore it. Pick up the phone and explain to someone on the other side of the call, and just say, I'm struggling. What help can you give me?
Mm. Fantastic. And I love the fact that you've put a disclaimer in your book as well, where you say that you're a financial journalist, not an advisor. And obviously, this book is your labor of love. And, it arrived in the post 2 days ago, and I've been absolutely, hooked. I consider myself someone who's not very smart with money. And, it's even within the first few chapters, I knew that this was for me. So thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you so much for putting all your expertise, everything that you've experienced and thought about, many of the things that you yourself, practice or into, putting that all into this book for us. Thank you very much. Last but not least, how can one buy Invest Now, which is by Kalpana Fitzpatrick, your book, of course. Is it freely available to buy, to download from websites?
Yeah, so it's on, you can buy it on Amazon, Kindle, you can obviously buy the paper copy, audio, and it's available in bookshops as well. So wherever you buy your books from.
Fantastic.
And enjoy it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Kalpana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The app available from the App and Play Store.